Today on Geeks of the Movies, I brought my tricorn hat because we're doing an in-depth review of The Patriot. Hola, Geek fans. Welcome back. It's time for another in-depth review from Geeks at the Movies. My name's Goodrich, and I'm joined by Rachel McLeod. And today we are talking about the 2000 film, The Patriot. Directed by Robert Emmerich and starring Mel Gibson, this tells you the story of the reluctant hero who has to get thrust into battle after the British come to his home in South Carolina and kill one of his sons. So he has to lead the militia, try to help win this desperate cause of the Americans against the British during the American Revolutionary War. Tell me, Rachel, why did you pick this film?
Good question. The answer is, when I first saw this movie, it was an epic film, lots of hype, big budget. I was swept away by the visuals, the scope and scale of all these massive Revolutionary War battles. I felt so enraptured into this film. Yet, now, after I've got my degrees in history and sociology or whatever have you, I want to give this a more deeper look, a little more critical eye from the historian's perspective. And with that being said, while there's many positives, I did see a few negatives. But let's first talk about the positives. Positives are, if you're a Heath Ledger fan, this is maybe your first impression of a young and upcoming Heath Ledger as Mel Gibson's son, basically, or I could say Mel Gibson's son, as Benjamin Martin's son, Gabriel. And I was quite impressed with Heath Ledger's first impressions on me in film. I was also very impressed with the visuals and with the atmosphere that was created in establishing that this was a Revolutionary War pick with an incredible film score by John Williams. Very impressive, but I'm going to turn to you. What did you think?
So I brought with me my tricorn hat. This is a actually historically accurate hat that had been worn by a British soldier, the Redcoats as we now call them, during the Revolutionary War. So I have a lot of experience with this period, and from a broad perspective, I really liked how it brought it to life.
Yeah.
So one thing when I see a film like this, or I see any historical drama that I look for, is does it bring the period alive to me? I can read a book and I can learn the historical narrative. I can watch a documentary with a low budget and get maybe a little bit of a taste, but I can do reenacting and actually get a flavor of it and do living history. But these big budget films, they give the opportunity because of the budget to really recreate a world that it's very hard for me to see.
Right.
So my first viewing of The Patriot, which was many years ago, was this is fantastic.
Yeah.
This is colonial life brought to reality. I see it. I see the clothing. I hear the music. I see the buildings. I see the general way and lifestyle that they live, and it seems very authentic to me. Years now, this is fast forward years later till today, where I have much more experience, understanding of the time period. I do see some flaws. They do some common errors. For example, they call the British the Redcoats. That term was not used actually at the time during the Revolutionary War. No. The colonists would have referred to them as the regulars. I see some mistakes of some of the female actors, the main female leads. They make them overly pretty with modern makeup. They wear their hair down and they wear very revealing dresses. That's all kind of pseudo-historical. It's relatively minor though. I see some other minor errors where they maybe use their weapons, but these are all fairly minor. And overall though, I thought the impression of the battles was believable and realistic. You saw how they fought. The way they fought, that is how they fought. They got into these blocks and columns and they went at each other.
And that was the big draw for me when I first saw the movie, was this really gives me the scale and scope that I didn't get to see when we were watching Glory, for example. Right. When we do a compare and contrast with Glory, I thought, well, the Battle of Antietam seems so small and compressed. Here, they didn't have that excuse of we didn't have the budget. They had all the budget in the world. Right. So you got the scale, you got the scope. You saw the regiments all lined up in rank and file. Impressive artillery scenes, impressive infantry scenes.
Yes.
They got it right. Whether it be the Battle of Camden or some of these other larger battle scenes, we saw scale and we saw scope. We saw that this was a major event.
Yes.
And you felt like you were enraptured in the major event of the Revolutionary War. It didn't feel like this is just a backyard picnic and you're watching like the Weekend Warrior reenactments for giggles over a picnic. This was scale and scope, and I think that's where they got this movie right.
Yes. Now, moving a little forward from that, I start to see some cracks in the film. They first started bothering me was the heavy-handed exposition.
Yeah.
So they really try to hit all the talking points of the Revolutionary War. They say the classic lines: taxation without representation, King George is a tyrant, don't tread on me. They say these tropes, which did actually occur during the time period, but they really emphasize them in a heavy-handed way. And they also try to shoehorn a lot of stuff in there. So the focus is on Mel Gibson's character and his story, but they try to bring other elements that were issues of the time, and they do it very, very superficially. So, for example, during the time period, a lot of the colonists remained loyal. They were called Tories. They remained loyal to the crown. There is lip service paid to this. There's one character, he's operating under Colonel William Tavington, kind of the main bad guy in the film. Yeah. He's like one of his lieutenants, and he was actually a colonist fighting against his fellow countrymen. So but that's just one person. They don't really go into it. In addition, I dislike how they handled slavery. They have one main black character who's fighting for his freedom. Otherwise, they pretty much just ignore this tremendous issue. And this is where I want to start to bring Mel Gibson in this, who I think for the crux of this film, the problem of this film is with Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
And it's not just the acting, but it's a lot of the writing. So Mel Gibson's character, he's a South Carolina plantation owner that doesn't own slaves.
Right. Like how's that even possible?
All the founding fathers that were plantation owners, southern plantations, they all owned slaves.
Right.
All of them, without exception.
Thomas Jefferson, hello.
George Washington.
But, and the thing is, in some of my notes, the screenwriter had mentioned that Mel Gibson's character was basically a composite of 4 major players in the Revolutionary War. Okay. But he's not a slave owner?
Right. He's a composite that never existed. His type fundamentally doesn't exist.
And if we're going to talk about Mel Gibson, let's just talk about his whole performance in the sense that he is going to be your action hero for this entire film. He's basically personally saving us from the British.
Yes.
It's all on his shoulders. Whether it's his tomahawk ninja skills to his heavy-handedness, bravado, like bullets don't affect me, I go into slow motion action scenes. All of these little nuances overshadow the history.
Yeah. Overshadow
the importance of subplots or developing characters or character development period. It's all about Mel Gibson. He's going to basically win the Revolutionary War.
I mean, that's what it feels like. It actually feels like by the end of the film, Mel Gibson wins the Revolutionary War for us. His character, Benjamin Martin, again, it is a composite character. There are elements taken from actual historical characters. One of them was called like the Marion the Swamp Fox, or something like that, who was a fighter in the French and Indian War. But they make Mel Gibson, the character they show us, is this character who can do no wrong, really. They talk, they pay lip service that in the past, during the French and Indian War, he committed all these atrocities. But they never show us the atrocities. Right. They never flash back to it. Right. So they tell us he does bad stuff, but on screen, he's a loving father, he's concerned about his country. When he finally gets involved, he gives it his all. I never get a sense of that, like he could have ever been this character, really.
Right. But you know what also frustrated me, too, is like, in one of the earlier scenes, he's going to Charleston for the big state convention or some sort of voting.
They're voting
Congress to see whether or not they're going to get involved in the war or not, over financial matters, whatever have you. And he goes, in principle, I agree with this. Taxation without representation, blah, 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 all these laws.
All the talking points.
It's pure crap to me. But as a parent, I'm against this whole notion of jumping into the war. Never mind the fact that his son wants to be in the war, sees the idealism and the reasoning behind it is like, well, if we want our independence, we do not want to be pushed around by the British, who've been pushing us around since whenever. We have no choice.
They're attacking us.
Right, and they've already been attacked.
Right, they've already been attacked.
They've already been attacked. This is a war in progress, and they're voting not to get into the war. The war's on you already.
Right.
So, you call him a saint. In some ways, he's like the saintly figure. I don't own slaves. I have principles, but, the bigger principle of wanting our independence from a tyrannical, oppressive monarchy that's going to run roughshod over the colonies, that's irresponsible. We don't want to worry about it.
It's annoying. In addition, let's talk about his counterpart in the British, Colonel William Tavington. Also kind of a composite character, I believe. Certainly not actually the character that he was based on, how actually he acted. So they make this guy a comic book villain. He's mustache twirling. Oh, I'm going to kill everybody. Oh, he kills Mel Gibson's son early in the movie. He's brutal. He sets people on fire in a church. This character is over the top, and throughout the film, we get this folktale version of the American Revolutionary War. This is not the war that actually happened. It is the folktale that's come down to us. Kind of like Paul Revere's Ride, which is always misstated and not actually how it actually occurred. So this is what we get. So we get the British as they're just evil, they're just bad guys. We don't get the nuance of the colonists actually sometimes going, wait, maybe we should stay with the colonies. We get the token French guy.
Yeah.
Again, another token character. We're like, well, the French played a big part in our victory. They briefly touched on at the end, briefly, after Mel Gibson's already won the war, of course.
And just to remind you that the French were involved in the war. We're going to throw in the token French guy.
Just like they had the token black soldier.
Right.
They had
the token slave.
The token Tory that's actually against the colonists before the. I mean, it's silly. They're playing. They're trying to portray the American Revolution as a folktale. Like, look, we are all brave and great, and the British were so horrible, and everyone was united. It was wonderful. And look, we even freed black people so they could fight on our side.
Right.
It's
a folktale on steroids.
Right.
Is what
It's not believable. And at one point, Mel Gibson's son, Heath Ledger's character, Gabriel Martin, gets married in like a slave colony or a slave.
Right. Gullah settlement.
Yeah, there's a settlement where there's a bunch of either they're freed slaves or they are slaves, but a number of plantation class owner people are there. They're white people, plantation class, and they're at this wedding where it's dominated by ex-slaves or maybe current slaves. I'm not really sure, and they're playing Caribbean music and everyone's dancing to it. It's laughable. That's just laughable.
As if the institution of slavery didn't really exist and it wasn't all that bad.
Right. It's just I mean, even if you were a slave owner, even if you were a Southerner who was like, you know what, maybe slavery is bad, you're not going to go to some wedding with a bunch of ex-slaves or slaves playing Caribbean music and dancing around. You'd embarrass yourself. You'd be an outcast in your society, in the plantation class society. You'd be look like
it's
crazy.
It's almost like a cheap musical number for the sake of. There's got to be a happy moment to offset the massive battles and the massive.
To me, it was very Hollywood because there was a lot of one-liners and cutesy scenes, like when they try to recruit people for their militia and they go into some bar, some tavern. Is this really a place to recruit people? God save the king, and they all get angry, and then the knife hits the door.
There's gonna be some stereotypes, and there's gonna be some like clever little bits just to kind of lighten the mood. But that's like a Hollywood trick.
I hate that. I hate that lighten the mood because this is war.
Right.
So if this is rated R, I'm like glory, but sometimes the film it undermines itself. For example, with the slow motion scenes.
Right.
You watch the scenes in slow motion where they're fighting, and immediately you think, oh, this is fake. It's not happening. It's not real. So this movie superficially is great, but as soon as you start digging into the details, it's bad on history. It doesn't really give you a good portrayal of the American Revolution, and I think Mel Gibson's character is just way over the top.
Yeah, and here's the thing: is like they had a big budget, and it was an R rating, so they really had no excuse to constrain themselves to these played out Hollywood tricks or these played out stereotypes or cliches or these little kitschy one-liners.
I think they wanted. This is summer blockbuster. Came out on July 4th.
Yeah.
So I think they wanted to appeal to a wide audience as they could. So if they actually really included the slavery question, if they actually really showed how the colonists were all in unison, there were a lot of Tories, there were a lot of people that were pro-British, they actually showed these more complex issues, it would turn some people off that don't really understand the history, and some other people off that are like, you know what, I just wanted a good action movie with Mel Gibson. I didn't really need to have all this in there.
I mean, that's what it is.
If you like Mel Gibson.
Yeah, you're fine with this.
Yeah.
This was a summer action movie. I guess we were all hoping that it would be more of a gritty, real historical fiction, much in the same vein as Glory was.
Right. That's what I was hoping.
But this is no Glory. But it had no excuse. It had the money, it had the budget, it had a great film score, it had good acting, good costuming. To a point, it had some excellent costuming. It had certainly good prop guys. And
yeah, it had a lot of good stuff. I mean, when it comes to the period authenticity, it's 90% accurate. So it's really good. Like I have to nitpick about some of these things. If you're the average person or someone just wants to get a good general sense, it'll give you that good general sense of the period. You don't need to worry about some of the minor things that are incorrect. Like for example, you see a lot of people, they're wearing boots that are left and right, but that generally speaking, it would just be straight lace boots that wouldn't have a differentiation between left and right. Those are so minor. Yeah. Whatever.
As an educational tool, if you put this on mute and forget the plot, you can get some really good visual illustrations of what it was to be in battle. What it was to be.
Like here's a battle scene. They give you a nice wide shot. So you can really see, there's cannons, and you see, there's the horsemen coming in. It's
cool. You can see some differentiation between like how the militia arm themselves
Right,
versus the regular armies.
Yes, that's true, and that's generally accurate. How they show
some of the chemistry amongst the soldiers and officers.
Yes.
You'll get that. But all in all, I think it's kind of a wash, this movie.
So let's get to the point.
Yeah.
What are you rating this?
I'm gonna give it a 2.5 flags.
2.5 flags. I had 5 flags, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
2.5 out of 5 flags. I'm going to use my usual star system. I give this 2 stars. 2 out of 5 stars. I actually thought I'd like it more.
I'm going to give it...
My memory was incorrect, though. I realized that these years since I saw it originally, I learned too much history. I'd gone to school. I'd done reenacting. I'm like, nope, now all this stuff, it falls apart a lot.
I give it half a star more because John Williams' score is phenomenal.
It's a good score.
I'm a big fan of John Williams.
It's an excellent score, but either way, this has been another in-depth review. Stay tuned for more where we talk about the history and we criticize the film. So we bring you film criticism and a history lesson all in one.
Yep.
Either way, I'm Shane Goodrich. This is
Rachel McLeod.
And we're in Geeks at the Movies.